We're happy to have him here. You see his name right here. It's Jay Meissner. Welcome on stage.
Good morning, everybody. And thanks for the kind introduction, Mark. I already did it.
We need a timer for that.
It doesn't help anyway. So yeah, my name is Jay. Forget about the Andre. And before I kick this off, I want to thank some people. If you take a look at this week's agenda at Nuremberg Web Week, you guys rock. Thanks for coming here, for supporting this event. There's so much stuff going on this week, so good having you. And I hope this is going to be a wonderful day for us all. So please join me in giving a big hand and a round of applause to Josh and Mark for carrying all the chairs in here. I could have said that better. There are some people that drive stuff and kick stuff forward, and you're definitely part of that. So props back to you. You rock. A special shout out to my friend and colleague, Razvan Caliban at Adobe, who actually built a lot of the content and the demos I'm going to show you today. And Razvan is part of a team called the Adobe Web Platform team, which I'm proud to be co-working to. As these guys are constantly wowing me with new stuff, and today I want to talk about that excitement and around all that new stuff. And I have barely enough time, as Mark already mentioned, so let's get this started. As you might know, there are new features coming to CSS that deal with layout and graphics. Printed media, such as newspapers or magazines, so antiquated media that comes on cut-down trees, still has advantages, such as content that goes from one box to another, and text that flows naturally around objects to great detail. This was missing on the web. On the web, typically you find one column with content spiced up by some sexy rectangles, right? So let me introduce you to CSS Regions. CSS Regions essentially is a feature that allows you to control where content goes on your page and what happens if it doesn't fit into a certain box. Using CSS Regions, you can flow content from one container into another rather than hiding or scrolling it. So, but since we're dealing with a variety of devices that come with different pixel densities and readability, and of course at least two orientations. I mean, there are more if you're on the sofa or on the bed or stuff like that. We look to float our content wherever we want it on the page, so need to be dynamic. Just as compared to these print layout guys. I mean, we want the same flexibility like these guys have, right? Do we want it? Okay, still need some time to wake up. Huh? Just trying. So, CSS Regions work in a two-step mechanism. Nice shadow effect, by the way. In the first step, we use a selector to collect some content in what is called a named flow. And we're basically telling the browser, look, this is the content we want to work with, so please put this to the side. I'm going to deal with that later. At this point, the content doesn't render anymore on the page. It's like display none. It just sits there in the DOM, but you don't see it. The important part is step number 2, where we actually control where to show the content. So you use the selector again on some element, and with that, you make it pull the content from that bucket we defined before, the main flow. And this action is turning this element into a region. The content will start flowing into this region. What did not fit into the first one will go to the second one, and so forth until all the content from the main flow is displayed. The main advantage here is that these regions, these elements, can be whichever shape or size you want it to be. And they can, of course, sit anywhere in the DOM. So let's look at an illustration how this actually works. So we have our flow collected in one place, and we have our elements which are going to be turned into regions. And that's it anywhere on the page, as said, with each different shapes and sizes. And when we marry the two together, we get our content appearing in the shape and order we have used. So let's just switch from theory to some demos. I have this nice screen down here where I can see what, without doing a presentation like that, which is awesome, thanks. Please note that I have pre-recorded most of that stuff, because at first, Mark Thiele scared me like hell 1 week from now, 1 week ago, mentioning that the internet in here is going to be on a scale from sucks to non-existent. So, second thing, on Monday, a Chrome update broke one of the demos. And so, yeah. Finally, like always, I run in great danger. I got to time my here to exceed my talk time. So, enjoy my very relaxed annotations to the upcoming moving pictures, just like in any great Jake Archibald talk. And if there are any doubts, just catch me after the talk. I got all that stuff running on my machine. So, here's an article accompanied by imagery using some typekit web fonts. There's a second page and possibly more pages depending on how much text doesn't fit to the previous page. I'm going to select some text and show you what actually happens when we resize the window. You know, the accordion thing, which only web developers do and nobody has ever done in real life. You can see what's happening. This is using CSS Regions, so the text is overflowing to the next page, and there's even a third page as needed popping up. So, of course, this is a demo that echoes back to traditional print. Well, today you could say it's an already classical form of digital publication. Let's check out a bit different usage of this new feature with the next demo. So we've teamed up earlier this year with some guys from National Geographic to create a demo that is using all this bleeding edge stuff, like regions and filters and shapes and balanced text and whatnot. So the demo is about giant trees that are in some Californian woods. Have you seen that stuff? Somebody of you? Okay, so I'm not going to show that to you, because it's about trees and snow. I'm going to show you some baby elephants. Yeah. Look how sweet they are. So, while scrolling down that page, you see some of these nice pictures here. Again, baby elephant. I mean, isn't that awesome? It's an article and a demo that sits online, and if you want to check out and read it after the talk after today, I really suggest that to you. It's a great story, and it's great pictures. So while that page is scrolling, if you have been paying really close attention, I mean, besides the baby elephants, you might have noticed that each picture on the page occupies exactly one viewport height. So, just in case you don't know about the viewport height unit, it's something that is defined by the viewport only. It will give you 100% of the viewport, and only the viewport can define it. So we're using this thing in conjunction with CSS Regions to flow content between regions that are using this viewport height units. This is very neat to do, especially on these mobile devices where you are likely to lose track, where you've lost it. It's just giving your page a strict order, where every one screen picture is followed by one screen of text. And as said, yeah, it will prevent to lose where you've been. I mean, at least when you're putting up your head sometimes from your device when you're reading something, just to prevent running into anybody. And if you don't do that to prevent bruises or hurting anybody, you probably don't care about baby elephants. So let's step to the next thing. While figuring out that this is like sort of kind of doing the job what we looked to as an enabling layout control in the browser that has been known for generations for the print guys, we ran into this really interesting side effect that was totally unexpected, but can prove quite valuable. We found that what we are achieving in addition is markup separation. Because of this two-step flow, that makes regions work by collecting content from one place and injecting into another, we can separate our semantic markup from the layout markup, like the stuff we need to build some time to time to make stuff behave just right. So we could use regions to inject our content into something that essentially resembles HTML templates. But besides these nifty, long-awaited possibilities in styling content, CSS regions open up the door for a lot of new possibilities for responsive design across devices. Let's look at some of these possibilities with another demo. This is just a rough sketch of a web application somewhere. We got some buttons in the header and in the footer and some content in the middle, just random thing. To adopt to small screens, a common design pattern would be to group all these non-essential navigation items into one menu item to the left, top left. Which is easy to do, right? Which is quite difficult to do, because you need to basically rip them out of the DOM and collect them and blah, blah, blah. So let's look at that. If you were just to use CSS regions, we could do something like this. In this example, we are simply collecting all the elements and flow them into the menu, which can perfectly be off view, as you can see. So let's resize this and look at the code very quickly. There's this aside ID menu, which sits to the left. And at a specific breakpoint, when stuff really gets narrow, this is going to consume content from the named flow called controls, which we are generating right in that moment. Easy as shit. For those of you who followed the last phone gap day, that's a specific term. We're generating this named flow, as I said, at this specific named breakpoint. And as far as I'm concerned, this definitely adds, or could help. Adds some nice tools, right? What do you think so far? Is that helping? Maybe eventually. We'll see. Okay, let me point out one thing. What's really important here is that regions are only visual containers. Any event handlers you would have attached, any styling you applied, will just continue to work. Regions just position stuff visually into another place. Everything still lives at their original DOM position. So let's talk about CSS region status. Regions is being implemented in WebKit and Blink, so Safari, Chrome, and Opera's Blink using browsers are covered. And there's a partial implementation from IE 10 up. I looked it up again, Sven. IE 9 is bullshit. IE 10 up, using a bit older version of the spec. So, as anyway, you want to check what you're doing and how compatible you want to and need to be. So, while we're talking about implementation, and since we're talking about pretty expressive use cases of these new CSS features, what about the support for these features in your toolchain? Or maybe more important to the developer guys in here, to the toolchain of your coworkers, the designers. The challenge to these developing designers or designing developers, however you name it, that create concepts and components for the modern web became much more diverse. And in the same moment, the possibilities are expanding, like the universe. Is it still expanding or again? We'll see. Anyway, Adobe has and is developing new tools that let you explore these edges of what is possible in the browser. And one of these tools is Adobe Edge Reflow. This tool is built to close a gap. It addresses designers and gives them an instrument to design mockups for responsive websites. These mockups definitely stay in the boundaries of the browser, because Reflow is built based on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it visualizes itself using Chromium Embedded Framework. So your designer friend cannot deliver any CMYK mockups with print memories from the past to you. Isn't that awesome? So let's just quickly jump into Reflow for a very short moment and see if these guys can mock up what we are later going to code snug to our coding standards. And while we're taking a look at Reflow, I will super quickly, like 7 seconds, look at Edge Code, which is a new code editor for the web. And it's just a code editor, not a bloated IDE. It's also built in HTML and JS. And it's based on Brackets, the open source father of Edge Code, which sits on brackets.io and GitHub and is happy to see you contribute or even fork it, whatever you like. So let's jump out of here and right into that stuff. Let's open the Elephant Babies demo in Reflow. I'm zooming this out a little bit so you see more of the article, and use Reflow's preview feature, which is just pressing tab to hide the property panels. As you can see, the project uses 3 different breakpoints. And when we scroll the content, we see a little bit earlier production stage of the article I showed to you earlier. We select one of the text containers. You can see Reflow in its current preview release already supports CSS Regions. And as long as these are not available in all browsers, we hide these shiny new web features in the shiny web features panel, where you can activate support for regions and filters currently. So let's jump to the point where we left our unfinished project. As you can see, Reflow symbolizes that there is more content in this element to use. That seeks for a definition, where to flow to, basically. I'm just doing that very quickly here to show how easy it can be for a complete non-coder, or also for a coder, to work with regions. It won't get much easier than that. Super easily, we have created a text flow, and important to mention is, we're always flowing text in the demos until now. It could be any element, any type of content. You're flowing from one box to another. It just doesn't matter. Let's quickly jump into a different project where we already have set the behavior for different viewports. It's just it's visually a bit more expressive with this demo. And another cool tool I personally love is Edge Inspect, which allows you to sync all your real devices with your computer to remote inspect and grab screenshots and do whatnot. The cool thing is that Edge Inspect is integrated into Reflow. So in my demo setup here, I recorded the setup of 3 devices we want to inspect. So we're just jumping to a position which is really well visible on devices. And here are my 3 devices sitting in front of my computer. I didn't have enough time to clean them before I did the shot, as I see now. And the next time when I record something like that, I will definitely turn off the red blinking light of my GoPro, I promise. But as you can see, the devices refresh to all the recent edits we have just made in Reflow. So it's basically in sync, and you see how the different variants of your design react. And this time, the iPhone in the middle didn't react, so we go to a very small viewport and mess the design up there as well. And as you can see in the middle, smartphone in portrait orientation has messed up bikes now as well. So let's quickly jump over to Edge Code, where I want to show you the tooling status of CSS Regions in our new code editor. We're opening CSS file here just to quickly show the code completion as it is sitting there today. And the nice thing is Inspect is integrated into Edge Code as well. So you can do the same thing if you don't want to work visually, just do it from there, and your devices sync while you work. It's pretty nice as well. OK. Now, how do you get your hands on 10, 20, or 30 different devices? Because, as you know, you should test your stuff across real devices, right? This is where so-called open device labs come to the rescue. ODLs are places where people gather and share devices for free, for everybody. So if you like the idea, how do you find the closest ODL? As Mark mentioned, back in January, together with my friends Christian Schäfer and Ansem Hannemann, he's here today, I created opendevicelab.com. It's a central directory that helps developers to locate, contribute, and maybe sponsor Open Device Labs. The site is geolocation enabled and helps you to locate the nearest lab to your position. And as you can see, I already did the work for you. There's one at Tollwerk, right here in Nuremberg. So if you want to test your stuff, go there. They have currently 30. Oh, is that current content? I mean, I took the screenshot on Monday. It isn't even actual because right now we have 77 Open Device Labs with a total of 1,680 devices or something like that. So it's changing every day and doesn't really make sense to take screenshots. And the Open Device Lab Nuremberg, that's what I wanted to say in the next slide, that the Open Device Lab Nuremberg is upstage to check it out. The site, as is of course responsive. It would be a total pity if you couldn't see it across a variety of devices, right? So you can leave comments, and we ask you to do that. So if you go to Yoshi's lab at Tollwerk, rate them, give them a comment, because this actually helps the visibility at sponsors. People like Nokia or Sony or whoever is looking at that and saying, oh, a lot of people are using this lab, so it makes sense to send devices for free to them. So use the feature, please. We also have some other Open Device Labs here, and not trying to mention them now. I'm not trying to do it. But there is an API for everybody to access, so you can help to communicate the ODL idea and movement by just pulling out the data and doing whatever you need and want to do with that. There's documentation on that on the page, and a number of other really easy ideas and possibilities to help the movement. So if you like it, you could just send a tweet, for instance. It's a pre-made tweet on the site. So check it all out on odl.com. And by the way, I just brought some more of these ODL marker stickers. So if you want, find me later and grab your sticker. If you like the idea and you want to found your own Open Device Lab, because there is none in your vicinity, that's exactly what I want you to do. And I would love to help you to do that. And this is the reason why I run a non-profit beside my paid job at Adobe and spending some time talking about that right now. And this is the reason why I love this whole thing, seeing come together. There's LabUp.org, where I try to collect all the information you need to start up your own Open Device Lab. Adobe, by the way, supports Open Device Labs by sponsoring a free year of Edge Inspect. So, and as Mark already said, tomorrow the first ever Open Device Lab Administrators Meetup is going to take place right here in Nuremberg. So if you want to learn more, grab us later, or Yoshi is going to say something about that later, maybe where the location is, and just join us tomorrow and find out. So far for the commercials, and back to bleeding edge CSS stuff. CSS blending. That's actually part of a bigger spec called blending and compositing. Where compositing is, I need to read that because it's difficult to explain. The graphical operation that the browser does to merge two elements or shapes into a single shape. And blending is the graphical operation of mixing the color and transparency values of the two elements being composited. Who wants to repeat that? Too early, right? I brought some pretty pictures to explain. Until now, browsers have given us really simple alpha compositing possibilities. Here's one example of multiple backgrounds that using a linear gradient with an underlying picture. So with simple alpha compositing, with a semi-transparent gradient, you get the effect to the left. This represents what the browser and Johnny Ivy can do for you. With blend mode, we convinced the browser to give us a bit more Instagram-ish stuff like the one to the right, which is using a background blend mode called overlay. So let's look at how these background blend modes work. They're essential mathematical functions that each take the color and alpha value of one pixel, run them through an operation which combines them with the color and alpha value of another pixel. And in result, you get the blended result. Let's check out the code here. We're trying to blend the background image from the source with the background color. And when I change that background color, you see that the result instantly changes. The fun thing is you got various blend modes to use. This one is using hard light. You could also try something like multiply, or maybe even screen here, which gives a much lighter result. And this is basically allowing us to build textures right in the browser without having ever created an image in an external application. There are a lot of different blend modes to choose from. Just look at the list. I mean, color burn is quite nice, even in the winter. Hard light, sunburn is missing. Color dodge, whatnot. So check them out. There are examples for all of them in the spec. And make sure you test them, each of them with different pictures, because they will behave completely different with different input stuff. So there are other possibilities, such as blending two background images inside the same element, which can be quite interesting as well. But so far, this was only about background blend modes. Because quite honestly, this is the only thing that is currently implemented and available across browsers. Not of the whole talk, I mean, of background blend modes. The cool kid on the block coming up next is element blending, which brings the possibility of blending two different elements together. Like in this example, a paragraph of text and a texturized image. What, of course, opens many other possibilities. And I'm really looking forward to see that stuff. CSS compositing and blending status in terms of implementation, the status is quite diverse here. Basically, all three, or all major engines, all of them, have a different status. The reason is because there are background, element, and canvas blend modes, and it's diverse. Check it out. It's an ongoing process, as you know. So, let's talk about shapes in CSS. Our friend Holger Bartel posted this tweet just this week, 2 days ago, or 3. And it's a perfect boilerplate for what I'm going to talk about now. So I'm really happy. Thanks, Holger. This bastard didn't come out here, huh? From Hong Kong. So what shapes do we have in CSS right now? Rectangles. Tall rectangles, squares, small squares. Because thanks to border radius, we also have rounded rectangles. We have tall rounded rectangles, and I'm already pushing this far enough, but if you push it far enough, you get a circle. But deep inside your heart, you know, and the circle knows that it's only a square. So the page Holger referred us to has been this nice collection of Chris Coyer, where Chris has actually collected all kinds of crazy examples on how you can go crazy and drive this to the maximum. And there are quite some impressive examples on this page. Look at this heart, for instance, which knows it's a square, right? Silly. Or this curved tail arrow. I took the freedom to zoom it out because actually Command+ didn't help me with that. What a pity. Or the Space Invader, Holger mentioned, which is basically a huge list which goes down to here of box shadows. So in the end, why am I showing that to you? Because these guys are only visual representations. They are illusions of shapes. Why is that important? Because they cannot have any effect on other content on the page, the shape of it. It will still be a box. With this problem in mind, let me introduce you to CSS Shapes. It's a new spec and implementation and implementation, which aims to resolve that problem. Basically, CSS shapes come in two shapes. There's shape inside, which controls the wrapping of text inside an element. So you can wrap text in a circle. It's also can use an ellipsis, which is a squished circle. Rectangles, of course, or polygons. This is where stuff gets interesting. And then there's shape outside, which allows you to define the wrapping of content outside of the element. And in this example, we float an image of a coffee cup and define a circle with a certain size and shape to wrap the text around it. Here's a little demo where we combine the two shapes of shapes, which actually my colleague Razvan Kaliman built as well. This page is using CSS Shape inside for the key ingredients text to the upper right. It's a little bit light, but I hope you can see it. Text inside the coffee stain, which is wrapping the content inside the stain. But there is another shape used on the same element. It's the CSS Shape outside. And as we can see, it wraps the text around. It looks like a rectangle, but it isn't. And I blame Chrome for that. The element itself is floated, as well as the espresso cup to the left, which uses a CSS shape outside to flow the text around it. My microphone is falling off my head. So circles and simple shapes are definitely interesting. I think we can solve a lot of problems with that already. But of course, we can do much more complex shapes. And this is actually the promise we aim to fulfill. We can use polygons and define very complex shapes as a series of points. Or we could even take this a step further and use source images to knock out the shape where the image is transparent. Like the idea, or? Yeah, but can only see the first 3 rows of people, so need some feedback, guys. In order to demonstrate complex shapes, here's another demo. And this has been pre-premiered at the CSS Conf in Berlin, like 3.5 or 4 weeks ago. And just it's been shown by our man Arno Godol on HTML5 DevConf 2 days ago. This was a real premiere and kicked the ass of some, I don't know. How many people are at CSS, at HTML5 DevConf in San Francisco? 10,000 or so. Huge conference. So with that, we thought of demoing a way to enhance visual storytelling using CSS shapes. This is done by teaming up with a French agency called Ultra Noir, who designs some wonderful graphics. As we at Adobe have no idea about designing wonderful graphics ourselves, we work with that agency who did it, and I think they did a nice job. We just stitched some CSS shapes on top of it to build this interactive and engaging experience of reading the Alice in Wonderland story. Isn't that nice? After baby elephants, I bring up Alice in Wonderland on a developer conference. I love that stuff. So, looking at this, you should immediately be struck by the way text is wrapped around that tree shape, right? This is scroll-driven navigation. So as I slowly scroll down, at one point we start moving the text using margin top. The layout is rendered by the browser, and the text falls right into the rabbit hole, which is basically the main point of that whole Alice in Wonderland story, as far as I looked it up. And comes back, of course, when we're scrolling up. So let's scroll again. And this will slowly crossfade to the second screen. Alice falls into the rabbit hole. She's a bit disoriented. There are shapes outside around these mushrooms, so the text follows the shape. Actually, we have a bunch of mushrooms and weird flowers and other rubbish in here. Must be really messy rabbit living in there. At one point in the story, Alice reaches the caterpillar, and these two have a conversation. We just used a transition with CSS filters for the landing effect over there, and the storyboard from Ultra Noir said, look, this caterpillar is smoking something there. So maybe you guys could do like the text is like coming out of, the pipe. French guys. Huh? This is an excellent sample for the use of CSS shapes, of course. So as I'm scrolling down further, we are using an ellipsis shape inside for the first puff of text smoke. The text wraps inside of the ellipsis, and we're simply repositioning and growing the shape, and of course animating it out to that illusion of puffing, disappearing smoke. The scrolling works very smoothly, back and forth. It's an easy operation. And this is it's just animating CSS shape on the fly. No rocket science. So the conversation of these two goes on. Alice is pretty unhappy with changing her size all day in and out, which is the other key plot of the story as far as I looked it up. The caterpillar is, which is of course a very trustworthy person, as you can see, is suggesting why not eat some mushrooms? Because as we all know, that solves problems. So she goes ahead and eats some mushrooms, and we should better fade out here now. So when you eat mushrooms, apparently strange things can happen. Take this as a warning. For instance, you could meet a speaking cat. So let me introduce you to the first cat content of today by introducing the Cheshire cat. The cat is done by a CSS shape outside around the floated cat. So the text will go around the cat, but at the same time nicely snuck into the polygon of the rabbit hole. And as we scroll down, we have multiple images of the cat appearing. And due to the 16:9 resolution, this is actually cutting off some content to the lower end. We built that for 4:3 ratio, so apologize for that. But these guys wanted HD stuff. So, of course, Alice follows the cat through the whole thing. I mean, this must really be where this whole internet thing about cats was actually born, right? Correct me if I'm wrong with that, but I always wanted to find out. I don't know. So Alice follows through the story, and other CSS shapes have been applied, as you can see. And at one point, Alice goes to the Queen's Garden, and she plays croquet. So as Alice is playing, there's another appearance of the Cheshire cat. And since until now, everybody of us at Adobe has been eating enough mushrooms, we thought it would be cool to follow the story and have the cat slowly appear to the page, piece by piece. And just like in the real story of Alice in Wonderland, where the queen yelled, "Off with her head," there is, of course, no body to the cat. So let's quickly go back to the beginning of the story. While building this demo, we initially tried building the shapes in an outside software, which proved to be a very difficult way to work. Because we are basically designing the shapes inside a software and then exporting the list of points to the browser and see how it works, and then we're going back and editing the shape and going back and forth, and no fun way to spend your working day. So we came up with a pretty interesting solution, and this is another thing Razvan built. What if we could use something to affect the shapes right inside the browser? So we built this small browser extension that allows me to edit the shapes right inside the browser. Like this. This generates a polygon by the shape inside property we have over here, and of course it makes it much easier to edit the shape while browsing. So I can just mess around with these points, move and reposition them, or add some of them by double-clicking, or by alt-clicking I can delete them. And basically I'm messing up all the hard work Razvan did for building that great demo and destroying it completely. just for the purpose of showing you the nice CSS Shapes editor. I mean, I said nice. Do you like it? This is being recorded, so Rasman, that was for you. This is just a part of our efforts of authoring modern tooling for web standards-based compositions like this. I'm really glad this actually worked, because if not, my colleagues would still be sitting there and wasting their time in Photoshop to go back and forth and build some shapes. I wouldn't be here and show it to you today, so I'm smiling about that. Let's talk about CSS Shape status. It's being implemented in WebKit. It's in Chrome. It's implemented in Chrome Canary, what I used to record this demo, and whereas we know the implementation is usually a bit ahead of what it is in Chrome. CSS Shapes features are behind Chrome flags, but I invite you to go ahead and play with them. This will be present and here and the thing your customers are asking you for in no time. So, and since maybe, no, for real, Adobe is the only company without an own browser that still kicks ass in terms of web standards, if I can say it like that. I mean, I'm being paid for that, but it's my true and honest personal opinion as well. I invite you to go to html.adobe.com and learn about the other stuff we're working on, because that's not everything. CSS masking is something you should definitely take a peek at, but it's not enough time to talk about that today. You will find links to relevant specs and tests. You'll find which flags to enable to use these features in browsers, and you'll also find download links to the reflow projects I've used if you want to turn the attention of somebody to that. You can grab your free trial of the Creative Cloud, get the Edge tools and services, check out Edge and Spec, and play around with those if you like. And so far for the commercials again. Let me sum that up. Today, we've looked at a lot of new options for future responsive layout. We've seen modern web design using CSS Regions. We've seen how we can use CSS background blending to generate textures on the fly right into the browser. We've seen that speaker with a frog in the sore throat, sorry. Nuremberg beer, I'm telling you. We've looked at CSS Shapes to wrap content inside and outside of simple and also very, very complex shapes. And we've seen how the web will finally break free of the rectangle. So guys, these are no prototypes. These are no experimental features. This is no early alpha stuff. There are developers actively working on implementing this stuff into browsers and tooling. And where the stuff is not already complete and available for you to use today, it will be totally soon. And whatever else the future might offer for all of us. I hope you had some fun today and liked what you've seen. I did already in seeing you, I mean the first 3 rows, maybe more of you later. I hope to see some of you tomorrow at the ODL admin meetup. And if you want to follow me on social media, this is giving a pretty good impression of where I'm not available. So if there are any questions, I will be around. Thanks for coming.